Hi, it's Jan. Welcome back to my sewing room and my channel where I show you tips and tricks that will make your sewing projects a little easier, less stressful, and more enjoyable. And I may even save you a little money. In today's sewing tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a cute crossbody bag that has an interior zipper pocket. Putting a zipper pocket in may seem a little intimidating, but really it's quite easy. It's a beginner sewing tutorial. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process and show you a lot of tips and tricks along the way to apply a strap, a boxed bottom, and I'll give you some fun ideas of different fabrics you can use and how to apply a tag if you want to. So without any further ado, let's get right into the project. First off, let's go over the materials and things that you'll need to make your bag. The exterior fabric, you're going to need 2 pieces cut to 13 by 11. I am using this scrappy fabric panel that I have made, and I have a fun tutorial showing you how to make that. Otherwise, you will just need 2 pieces of fabric. You can really use any kind of fabric as long as it's not stretchy. And if it's not thick enough, you can stabilize it with some kind of stabilizer. So the outer panel will need 2 of those. You'll need 2 pieces of lining fabric. I have chosen this linen fabric, and you will also need 2 pieces of stabilizer. And this is cut 13 by 11 as well. Now this is fusible fleece. You can also use regular interfacing. I like using a medium weight interfacing if you choose to do that. You'll need a pocket piece, and this will be cut 13 by 10 inches. And you'll also need a stabilizer for the pocket cut to the same size. For the strap tabs, you will need to cut a piece of fabric 4 by 6 inches. You don't need to stabilize that. For your strap, you'll need to cut, this is cotton webbing. You can use whatever you want. You can order a leather strap if you want. And I'm going to make that adjustable, so I'm going to cut this 53 inches. For the hardware, you'll need 2 of these swivel hooks and a D-ring, a 1-inch D-ring. You'll need 2 of those. You'll also need some magnetic snaps. We are going to place those in the bag. This is optional. So you'll need a male and a female piece. They come in a set. I'll put the links in the description below for these items if you want to get them. And you'll also need this little gadget to adjust the strap if you want to, and it's a 1-inch. You'll need your zipper, of course. I like using zippers by the yard. You can buy a zipper in the store if you want to that's packaged. It just needs to be a 7-inch zipper, and if you're using zippers by the yard, you'll need to cut that to 8 inches. And if you're using the zipper by the yard, you'll need a zipper pull. To cut out your fabric pieces, I really like using a rotary cutter, a rotary mat, and a rotary ruler. You're going to get straighter cuts, and it's a lot faster. You can use a pair of fabric scissors if you want, and you will need a pair of those anyway. Some pins or some fabric clips. And I'm going to show you a little trick and tip for putting your zipper in, and you can use just a regular Elmer's glue stick, or you can use this glue based it, which I really like for these types of projects. You'll need an iron and ironing board and your sewing machine. The first thing that you'll want to do is apply your stabilizer to your fabric. Now, I don't need to do that for this piece because it's good to go. So I'm going to set that aside. Otherwise, I would put my fusible fleece and press that on here. And a tip when you're putting your pieces together, I like to label the pocket piece on the back of the stabilizer, just because all these pieces can get confusing. If I were to put this together like this, these lines wouldn't line up. So I have also on the back put a little star indicating that this is the top of the panel. So when I put those right sides together and sew them, I will be doing it correctly. Let's apply the interfacing to the lining. Iron-on interfacing, or this fusible fleece, has a bumpy side to it. There's little pieces of glue knobs that you can feel. And you want to place that right side facing down onto the back side of your lining piece. You'll want to put it on a wool setting and with steam. While we're at it, I'm going to press our strap tab. Fold it in half lengthwise to make a crease. And then I'm going to fold the outer edges to the center. And then fold it in half. Then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch from this edge and this edge. It's always a good idea to change your needle when you're starting a new project. I'm using just a universal 80 needle. If your fabric is a little bit thicker, you might want to use a 90. I'm using just a regular straight stitch, and I'm using that little red line on the edge to guide me for that 1/8 of an inch. Now I always like to show this so you cannot have this happen to you. I like to show you, see that nesting that is on the underside? That's not very pretty. So what I'm going to show you a little tip and a trick to keep that from happening is just use your starter and stop scraps. And you'll just start sewing on that first. But that edge up against there, and I'm using that little red line as my guide to my 1/8 inch allowance. Get that nice stitch without that bird nesting. Another option when you're top stitching and you don't have a cut edge to use, just hold that top thread. Where is it? There it is. Just hold that top thread for the first couple stitches and it will alleviate that as well. Fold that in half and then cut it in half. We need 2 of these little tabs, but this is a lot quicker than having to sew and fold 2 separately. So I'm going to set those aside for now. To create a boxed bottom like I have in this zipper pouch, like that, we'll need to cut out our notches. I'm going to share with you a tip on how you know how big to make those notches in the bottom of your bag. Let's say you want a 2-inch boxed bottom like I have on this little zipper pouch. You need to cut the notch half of that size. Whatever the notch you cut out plus the seam allowance that you're using on the bag equals the size of box you want to cut out. So my seam allowances have been 3/8 of an inch. So my box bottom would be 1 3/8 inch square. Let's say you wanted to make a 3-inch box bottom, a little bit bigger. You would make your box cut 1 1/2 inches plus the 3/8 inch seam allowance. You'd mark that on your little ruler and cut that out. Now a trick that I like to do is use my trusty painter's tape to mark my ruler, because it is so hard to see these lines sometimes and it can be confusing. I'm going to find that line, put a piece of tape there and one going this way on 1 3/8. I've already marked this, but I'm going to show you how to mark it using this little square ruler. You can use your regular ruler if you want to. So this makes it really easy. I can line up this edge. So let me show you on this. You can line up that edge and this edge and just use your pen to mark that. Okay? And then you'll cut that out. And you'll want to do the same thing for your lining. I'm also going to put a little star here indicating the top, just so I don't accidentally use it like this. All right. All right, you ready to apply the zipper to your pocket? I have already applied the fusible fleece to my pocket and to my lining piece of my bag. I have cut a zipper by the yard to 8 inches, and I have a zipper pull ready to put on. If you're using a regular zipper that you buy from the store, a package zipper, you will buy a 7-inch zipper and it will actually be 8 inches in length. The first thing that we'll do is mark our zipper box. There are several different ways that you can do that. You can just simply use a ruler and measure down, and I'll show you a few ways that you can do that. Or you can buy templates, are available, but some of them do cost a lot of money, and if you don't want to spend the money on a template, you can simply make your own, and I will be going over that in another tutorial. We need to mark the center points of our lining piece and our pocket piece. So I'm just going to fold that in half, the top edge, and take a pen and just make a little line there. And do that also with your bag lining piece. If you don't have a template, you can just simply measure down 1.5 inches and make a line. And then you'll measure down 2 inches and mark a line. Mark that center point. Our box needs to be 7 inches and we want it centered, so I'm going to measure 3.5 inches from that center point. Now, if you were using this template, all you need to do is simply find your halfway points right there. We're using the 1.5 inch mark, and simply trace around that square. So that's pretty nice. Now, some of those templates have a line that goes down the center, a cutting line, but that's real simple to do. All you need to do is make another line 1/4 inch from that top line. And I'm going to come in 1/4 inch from the side edges there. And you can even just eyeball this. Sometimes you really don't even need to draw this line. Then I'm going to make a little triangle cut there, just showing where we need to cut, and clip that after we sew. So now I'm going to take the pocket, place it on top of your lining, your bag liner, and this is where this 2 inch edge of this template will come in handy. I'm going to line up our center points, and we need to measure 2 inches down from the pocket or the bag lining. And then I'm going to pin that in place. And then you'll just take it to the sewing machine. We're going to sew around that box. I brought my presser foot down. I'm using just a regular stitch, 2.5 inches in length. And to make sure that my needle's coming down on the line, I'm going to turn the handle on my sewing machine so it brings down the needle, so I can tell if that needle is where it needs to be. I'm going to back stitch. When you get down to the corner, leave your needle down, lift up your presser foot and pivot. And when you get back to where you started, just backstitch. Now to cut out that line, a way to get that started is to fold the piece in half. And on this folded edge, just make a little clip in the fabric. Just enough so that you can get your scissors in there. You could also use a seam ripper if you wanted to. And we're going to cut along that center line. And cut it out to the corner, making sure not to cut into the seam. And then you're just simply going to slide the pocket fabric through the hole and flip it to the other side. And you'll notice it kind of bunches up on those side seams, but no worries, that will press out and flatten out. We'll give that a good press. And flip it back onto the other side. And this is a trick that really helps keep the zipper in place before we sew it. Now you could always just pin this in place if you wanted to, but I find this trick is very helpful. But before we do that, if you haven't put your zipper pull on your zipper, you can do that now. Now I have a tutorial in my other bag tutorials where I show you more in depth of how to do this, but I'll just simply refresh if you haven't. These little gadgets are handy. There's also a purple gadget that I have. You'll take the rounded edge of the zipper pull, put the zipper in with that facing up, and this is the back side of the zipper. So I want to bring the back side of the zipper. Pull it apart and just thread it down in. All right, now that is ready. I'm going to apply just a small bead of glue around the edge of that box. You can use even a glue stick if you want. But I really like this fabric glue, based it. And it does wash out and it doesn't gum up your needle. You want the zipper pull to be on the right side, and so we're going to insert that, center it, and I like to flip it over on the other side so I can manipulate it a little bit more. And then use your iron to set the glue. We're going to go to the sewing machine and top stitch all the way around. I'm going to switch out my presser foot to my zipper foot that looks like this. And we're going to ride the edge of the zipper foot along the edge of the zipper teeth. Now if you need to adjust the needle to the left or right, do that now. And when I'm top stitching, I like to use a little bit longer stitch, so I'm going to change that to a 3.0 instead of a 2.5. And to keep that thread from bird nesting on the top or the bottom, I'm going to hold that thread for the first couple stitches. Leave your needle down, lift up your presser foot, and then slide your zipper down if it's in the way. We're going to fold the pocket right sides together in half, line up the top edge and the side edges, and clip it in place. And we're going to sew around the 3 edges. We're not going to sew along the bottom fold. So how you do that, you'll just flip the top edge over, start at that folded edge, and sew around. I'm going to change my presser foot back to the regular foot. I'm going to change my stitch back to a 2.5 in length, and just sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So there's your zipper pocket. Isn't that pretty cool? Now we need to apply the magnetic snaps. We're going to measure 1 1/4 inch down. If I didn't have interfacing or something on the back of this, I'd want to cut a little piece of interfacing and place right there. So that would reinforce where we're putting these prongs. Measure down 1 1/4 inches. And take this little piece . And fold that. Just barely make a little snip. Yep, see those little teeny holes? You don't want to get them too big or the fabric will fray. And place this little washer type thing over the top, and then fold them down like that. So there's the snap on this one. Now we need to get the other piece, and you can cut it on the front or the back. There you go. Place the right sides together of our lining, and we're going to sew down here and then over here, and then sew down this side, leaving the top open. On the bottom section of the lining piece, we need to leave about a 3 to 4 inches. And you don't have to be exact. I'm going to put some red lines there. And I'm going to use that 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do the same thing for the outer panel, right sides together. Remember the top and the top, except on this piece we're not going to leave an opening. We're just going to sew all the way around. To make the boxed corners, stick your fingers between the layers, fold it flat so you're lining up the seam, and you're just going to sew across there. I like using my little stiletto thing to hold those seam allowances down. take the outer bag and flip the right side facing out. And there you have your boxed corner. Isn't that cool? Many of you know that I like to put labels and tags on my items, and I totally forgot to put this in. I can still do that, but ideally if you want to put a tag on, it would be best before I sew my side seams or sew these pieces together, but I can still do that now. So I'm going to put that little tag right there. And some of the labels you don't want to put pins in because it will leave a mark in the label. So I'm using my trusty painter's tape again. I'm just going to put that on there, and when I start sewing I can pull it off, but that will help keep it in place until I get it partially sewn. So I'm going to put that label on the inside, and then I'm going to put this cute J label on the outside of the bag. Some of you have already purchased some of my printable, editable labels that you can make yourself. It's really easy to do, and I have a tutorial showing you how to do that, but I have some new ones, some new fun ones coming out. You'll have to stay tuned for that. So I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and sew around those real quick. Take your tabs and one of the D-rings, slip the tab through the D-ring and fold it in half like this, and we're going to pin it onto the side seam of the outer bag. Open up your seam allowance and clip that in place. I have placed the strap tabs on the side seams and centered them and clipped them in place on both sides. Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and baste those in place using just a regular stitch, but I'm going to make it like 1/8 of an inch from the edge just to hold it in place. Now we're ready to sew the two pieces together. I'm going to flip my lining piece right side facing out. And slip it into my bag. Then I'm going to line up the side seams and clip it in place. Take it to the sewing machine and sew all the way around. If your sewing machine has a removable arm like this, you can take that off so you have better access. You can just slip that through there and sew around. If you don't have that, you can just place it and sew from the inside like this. It doesn't really matter where you start, but you're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end of the seam. Let's turn it right side facing out through the hole we left in the lining. The next thing that we're going to do is close off that hole we left in the lining piece. Fold in the seam allowance, which is 3/8 of an inch, and clip it in place. You can take it to the sewing machine and sew a 1/8 inch seam down the opening to close it up. I went ahead and hand stitched that bottom opening, and I really like the looks of that. I prefer that over the stitching on the machine, but you can do whatever you want. And now let's just stuff that back into the bag, poke out the corners, fold the edges out as much as possible and just give it a quick press all the way around, and then we'll top stitch. Something to note is we are going to be sewing through a lot of fabric. So if you have one of these little devices, you may not have used them before. I've shown you how in other tutorials how to use this hump jumper or something to prop up your presser foot so you get a straight stitch and no skip seams when you're sewing through a lot of different layers. So I'll show you how to use that. And I'm going to sew just 1/8 inch in from the edge. So where's my thread? There it is. Bring my presser foot down. You can kind of see how this presser foot is tilted up. The back is lower than the front. We want it to be even, so it pulls the thread. The feed dogs will pull the thread evenly and you don't get any skip stitches. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot again, slide the hump jumper underneath, and then lower my presser foot. I'm going to roll that lining in just a little bit, hold my top thread, take a few stitches, and I'm going to back stitch over the top when we come around. And just so slow. Some of your machines might not like all this thick fabric, but if you just go slow, it works a lot better. See how that hump jumper just fell out the back? So I'm going to grab it again. When I start coming off of this, the front is going to be lower than the back, and we want it to stay even. So when I notice that shift, I'm going to slip that underneath the front. We should be good. All right, and you just continue to top stitch all the way around. Back stitch. All that we have to do now is put on the strap. Let me show you how you use this hardware and how to put it on. Apply your swivel snaps on both sides. Something I recommend doing. See how the cotton twill is starting to fray a little bit? Even if I were to cut those off, they would still have a tendency to fray a little bit. So what I like to do is just take a lighter and just lightly burn those edges, and it kind of seals that so they're not going to fray anymore. Put on your slider, fold that underneath, just like a 1/4 inch, and then we'll top stitch that right now. Since this webbing is pretty thick to sew on, I am going to change my needle to either a denim sewing machine needle or a universal 110/18. I'm going to use a utility stitch on my machine. You can use a straight stitch, you can use a zigzag stitch. You just want to make it secure. I'm going to use my hump jumper on the back there and hold my top thread on those first couple stitches. Okay, let me show you how to thread the rest of it. So I have the back side of my slider. I'm going to come to the end, make sure I'm still on the back side, thread the back side through the swivel. Keeping it so it's not twisted, bring it back up through the slider. And then back out the other end. Through, fold it underneath, and then sew that in place. So there you have your crossbody bag with a zipper pocket. And it wasn't that hard, was it? You've got this. Once you learn these simple techniques, you could make any size bag and put a zipper pocket in anything. You can put them on the outside, on the inside. You could use lots of fun different fabrics to make your bags. If you're someone who likes to have a hard copy pattern and instructions, I'll have the link in the description below where you can get that pattern. I can't wait to make a lining for this crocheted bag that I've made. It's going to be a crossbody bag also with a zipper pocket. Let me know if you're interested in learning how to make this. It's a really simple basic crochet pattern that someone who's just learning how to crochet could make this. So let me know if you'd like me to do a tutorial on that. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and click on the bell so you can be notified when I put new videos up. If you like my content, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you want to check out my website, youmakeitsimple.com. There you'll find my patterns, other DIY projects, and tutorials that I think that you would like. Have fun sewing. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.